Imagine meeting someone who seems to embody everything you've been longing for: mystery, depth, warmth. But then you slowly realize much of what you saw was your own inner world reflected back, not a real person. What you initially fell for wasn't her, it was your own projection. Carl Jung warned men, there's danger in seeing through women, not into them. His insight isn't some dusty psychological theory, it's a personal wake-up call. When Jung speaks of the anima, the feminine archetype inside men, he's inviting us into the theater of our psyche. That initial fascination can morph into disillusionment when the real person doesn't match the fantasy. And it's not just heartbreak, it's a sign of inner disconnection. In this essay, we'll explore Jung's caution. What's behind the curse of projection? Why do we keep replaying it? And how can true connection emerge? Not from fantasy, but from real encounter. If you've ever wondered why relationships can feel both magical and confusion-ridden, stick around. By the end, you may see yourself, and others, in a new light. 1. Anima, archetype and projection. Carl Jung defined the anima as the unconscious feminine element within the male psyche, an archetype made of emotion, intuition, receptivity, and inner relatedness. It's not just a collection of traits, but a living psychic force, shaped by a man's earliest encounters with women, mother, sisters, female teachers, or cultural icons. Over time, this inner feminine becomes autonomous and symbolically rich, functioning as a bridge between the ego and the unconscious. Jung saw it as crucial for a man's psychological development, but also deeply dangerous when misunderstood or projected outward. Projection begins when a man unconsciously assigns these anima qualities to an external woman. Rather than seeing her as she is, he sees her through the filter of his inner feminine needs. He projects ideal beauty, wisdom, warmth, or spiritual allure onto her. Not because she inherently has these traits, but because they live within him, unrecognized. In that sense, she becomes a psychic screen, and the man interacts with his own unconscious more than the real person before him. This is what Jung meant when he warned that anima projection creates a world of illusion. It's emotionally intense, but not emotionally authentic. What makes projection seductive is its vividness. It feels like a soulmate connection, a cosmic encounter. The woman evokes powerful emotion, even obsession, because she resonates with the man's inner anima structure. But this resonance is also misleading. It seems deeply personal, but it's largely internal. Jung believed men must learn to recognize this process, not to avoid love or connection, but to build relationships that aren't based on illusion. By internalizing and understanding the anima, the man can reclaim those projected aspects: empathy, feeling, creativity, and finally relate to others with clarity, presence, and maturity. 2. The curse of projection. The curse begins subtly. At first, the projection can feel magical. The woman seems imbued with soulful presence, as if she uniquely understands him. But over time, the man begins to measure her by his internal standard. When she inevitably falls short, disappointment, resentment, or confusion sets in. This kind of projection shields the man from his inner emptiness. He doesn't have to develop emotional depth, he can expect it to show up in her. The projection softens the edges of his personality, making him dependent on her mirroring to feel whole. The ultimate danger: he doesn't learn to manage his emotions, integrate his vulnerability, or accept complexity. Instead, he clings to the fantasy. His anima remains unconscious, and real growth is suspended. The relationship becomes an ill-fitting mold. 3. Anima possession. Jung warned that an unintegrated anima can possess men. That begins when the internal feminine takes over, amplifying mood swings, hypersensitivity or passive-aggressive tendencies. The anima starts calling the shots, dictating emotional reactions rather than conscious choice. The possessed man might feel emotionally volatile, idealistic in one moment, withdrawn the next. He often reacts to women from the projection, swinging between worship and resentment. He becomes trapped in emotional tides he doesn't understand. This possession isn't feminine in a simplistic sense. It's the archetype in its shadow. It can cloud judgment, weaken boundaries, confuse roles, and distort interpersonal dynamics. The man loses agency. Jung believed this leads to a kind of psychic entrapment unless the anima is consciously integrated. 4. The fairy-like woman trap. Jung described a particular allure, the vague, fantasy-friendly, pixie-like woman. She's mysterious, elusive, emotionally unreadable. Because she's undefined, a man's anima projection attaches to her like static electricity. He fills her silence with longing, his desires with her shape. She becomes his dream in motion. The more amorphous she is, the more he writes her persona from within. Real conversation, real needs, and real differences get overshadowed by his internal drama. When she inevitably acts from her own self, not the version he projected, the fantasy collapses. His disappointment isn't about her, it's about the story he built. Recognizing the fairy-like setup helps reveal how deeply he's intermixed inner myth with outer expectation. 5. Anima, marriage, and relationship distortion. Once two people commit to long-term relationship, projection dynamics intensify. The anima may demand constant validation while dismissing conflict. The unrealized projection causes guilt, entitlement, or persistent dissatisfaction. A man may expect a wife to be intuitive, nurturing, artistic, less because she actually is, and more because he carried those traits inside him but never claimed them. When she doesn't measure up, subtle blame shifts to her. The projection disconnects him from his own anima's potential. His partner senses the emotional mismatch. She becomes objectified or undervalued, caught between idealization and rejection. The relationship then becomes a landscape of psychological projections, not mutual discovery. Growth stalls. 6. Individuation and integration. For Jung, individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires acknowledging and befriending the anima within. A man must consciously reclaim those qualities: empathy, emotional fluidity, creative attunement. Not from a woman, but from his own unconscious. Active imagination offers a tool, dialogue with the anima symbolically, through dreams, writing, inner conversation, or creative expression. Over time, the anima loses its unconscious grip, and projections lessen as reality replaces fantasy. As these integrated qualities emerge, relationships change. A man meets women as real individuals, not placeholders. He can feel emotional presence without needing her to validate it. Connection becomes mutual, not projection-based. 7. Jung's warning to men. At its core, Jung's warning is this: the curse of projection blinds you to real people and to yourself. Seeing through women might feel spiritually advanced, but often it's the opposite. It's spiritual bypassing. You're seeing an image, not engaging an individual. As long as you cling to the fantasy, emotional growth stays suspended. You don't notice the gaps in your inner landscape because you don't believe they exist. And when the fantasy fades, which it inevitably does, you face emptiness in two directions. She falls away, and your inner void remains. Jung was addressing men who prefer symbolic partners over authentic, flawed humans. He invited them to stop worshipping facades and start cultivating emotional depth. That's not just good for relationships, it's essential for personal maturity and autonomy. 8. Paths toward wholeness. Integrating the anima is not a one-time act, it's ongoing. Start by paying attention to recurring patterns. Frustration when a woman isn't what you imagined. Emotional emptiness, or cycles of idealization and rejection. These point to unresolved anima work. Active imagination. Intentionally converse with your internal feminine image. Ask it the questions you fear. Let it speak through drawing, dream journals, or writing letters to it. Let it show you what it wants. Seek mentors or therapy to especially explore how you've projected onto romantic partners. Journaling, creative practices, shadow work. All these help disentangle unconscious expectations. With practice, you'll approach others, and yourself, with clarity and compassion. Conclusion. Carl Jung's warning to men, beware the curse of seeing through women, isn't a call for cynicism. It's a challenge to awaken. His point wasn't that women deceive men, but that men deceive themselves when they unconsciously project their inner world onto others. When a man is blind to his anima, he turns women into reflections of his unmet emotional needs or spiritual ideals. The tragedy isn't that she fails to fulfill them, it's that she was never meant to carry them in the first place. At the heart of Jung's warning is this: a man must claim emotional ownership. He must do the hard, slow work of retrieving his projections, learning to feel what he previously expected women to embody for him. He must integrate sensitivity, creativity, and relational depth as aspects of himself, not external services to be sought from others. When he does that, something remarkable happens. His view of women changes. They are no longer mystical others or angelic muses, they are human beings. And more importantly, he finally meets his own humanity too. In the end, the curse isn't seeing through women. It's never truly seeing yourself. Jung's psychology invites men into a different kind of vision, not projection, but perception, not possession, but partnership. Real connection requires letting go of the fantasy, stepping into the unknown, and learning how to relate, not to your ideal woman, but to a real person. The anima is not the goal, it's the gateway. Through it, the man finds not just better relationships, but his own soul.